Greetings. I'm enjoying some leisure time and I'm deciding to respond to interesting comments with audio messages just because it's fun and it's a creation of more content, I suppose. Better than the written comment in certain ways, I suppose. I'm responding to Syzmonbaranowski8184, who gave me a very spirited, interesting comment. He was asking questions about different American groups and outlooks. So he says, was there anything third beyond Northern and Southern cultural models inherited from the British Isles? There certainly were. The great text on this matter, or at least an initial text for this matter, would be Albion Seed by David Hackett Fisher, which is a very delightful history, a very important history of colonial American groups. And we see with that particular history the interesting paradox, the strange, unexpected paradox, that different groups that settled colonial America could fit our definition of nationality. The Scotch-Irish, the Quakers, the Puritans, and the Virginia Cavaliers are the four groups from the British Isles that are mentioned or analyzed in a lot of detail in Albion Seed. So Albion Seed has a categorical sort of approach to these groups. It talks about distinctive speech, distinctive dialect, vocabulary, and accent. It talks about different kinds of food. It talks about different ways of raising children. It talks about different architecture and housing traditions. It talks about different religious traditions. It does a lot of very good analysis. And these are distinctive differences that nations, ethnic groups, even races, if we want to go as far as to describe those sorts of categorizations. Those are distinctive things that separate groups of people. You ask if there are other regional appellations in America. There certainly is. There is a Western region, and that would be distinct from the Pacific Coast. The Pacific Coast is a distinctive region. There is a camaraderie of the urban Pacific coastal cities, which are very affluent, quite culturally influential. They are centers of great wealth and influence. Places like Los Angeles, San Francisco, Portland, and Seattle. So those coastal cities. And those would be distinct from the Great West, which is relatively sparsely populated. It contains a tremendous amount of empty land. That would be Eastern California, Eastern Oregon, Eastern Washington, extending all the way towards the Mississippi Valley. So I would include Nebraska. I would include Kansas. I would include Oklahoma. I would include Western Texas, and everything between there and Eastern California would be the Western region. Now that is a distinctive area with its own cultural folkways, but they are connected with the South and the North. So Northerners tended to settle the northern West. Southerners tended to settle the southern West. So West Texas is a variety of Southern culture. New Mexico, not so much, but there are a lot of packets or areas in Southern California that contain large Southern diasporas. If you've heard of the novel The Grapes of Wrath, you can see that story played out. You can see some destitute Southern people from Oklahoma, people who share in Southern folkways, who make the trek to Southern California, and that is a major diaspora. You ask about Spanish or French models. There certainly are. In the American Southwest, you see a lot of Spanish influences. You see a Spanish Roman Catholicism that has continued on in a continuity there. There is an awful lot of distinctive architecture there in places like New Mexico. It is quite evident. It's still very much a way of life in New Mexico. Um, an overlooked American state of great beauty and worth, New Mexico. I highly recommend it if you don't know it. Um, there's a there are distinctive speech patterns there. There's still a lot of Spanish spoken there. There's been Spanish spoken there for a very, very long time. Santa Fe, New Mexico, the capital of New Mexico, is one of the oldest European-founded cities in the United States. Uh, in the geographical United States, there are obviously older European-founded cities elsewhere in the Americas, but this is one in the United States. And the people of New Mexico will claim it is the oldest. The other Clement is St. Augustine, Florida. Florida also has this old Spanish heritage, which is a curious thing. Florida is a pretty weird place culturally. We don't think of Florida as part of the regional South. Florida has such a gigantic population that has come from far and wide. It is really an outlier. Regionally. I think of Florida as a particularly alienating place. I don't want to want to be I don't want to offend Floridians. I want Floridians to love Florida. Florida, I just don't feel at home at all in Florida. It does not feel like the South. I would much rather be in Louisiana, um, or Georgia or Alabama for that matter. It's much more my speed, and I think it has a much more settled quality than Florida. Florida is extremely new, extremely busy, extremely rich. It's different to me. It seems to be full of people from New Jersey, which is amazing, incredible. I don't know what to make of it. I don't know what people from New Jersey are. So, um, you ask if there's a French model. There certainly is. In South Louisiana, we have a lot of French heritage. We still have spoken French. It is a small minority of people who still speak the French, but there are still plenty of people, not just of French heritage, but also of Spanish heritage. We still see a lot of names uh, that correspond there. In certain parishes of Louisiana, the Cajun French dominate. That's a distinctive grouping here in Louisiana. I intend to record more material about these people. They're very interesting people. Um, Here in southern Louisiana, we do have a lot of architectural traditions that still survive. We have culinary traditions that still correspond there. And I I contend that the Roman Catholic tradition here in South Louisiana, we have an unusual thing in the South, which is overwhelmingly Protestant and still religiously, the Southerners are still extremely religious people. Here in South Louisiana, Catholics predominate. The Catholics are the majority in South Louisiana, sometimes the extreme majority. I lived in a place recently, a parish, where the Catholics were 90% of the population. The Protestants were the extreme minority. And the non-Catholic population strongly understood themselves to be outsiders in that area. Even the ones that were there for a very long time, they weren't initiates into those communities. And it's not that there is tension or unhappiness that results from that. I did not sense that. I lived in the place for a year. I'm not really an insider, um, but it was a settled place, and everyone understood. You know, the Catholics settled this place, the French Catholics, and this is their place. They run things, and you could see that in the institutions of these towns, the way that these towns were run. the people that had been there forever. This is a very, very settled place. People really don't come from the outside world to live in these places. Um, just as an example, wonderful people, really delightful people. You ask about the Amish. Yes, they most certainly have a distinctive quality to them. They call outsiders to their communities the English. That is their descriptor for non-Amish people. I don't know that they would use that for ethnic Americans particularly. They, of course, came from the south of what is now Germany. They speak a special German dialect. They speak varieties of Low German that we call colloquially here in America, we call their language Pennsylvania Dutch. Not to say we think that they speak the Dutch language that's spoken in Holland, but because German-speaking people call their language Deutsch, and Americans traditionally have called that language, people who speak that language, the Dutch. It's just an old American nomenclature. And you may remember we started calling them that before there was a Germany. So you can pardon us for that. We don't typically call them Dutch anymore, but you can find people like Abraham Lincoln referring to Dutchmen and meaning Germans. So they have a strong recognition of insider versus outsider, members of their community, foreigners, people who are not members of their community are foreign on some level. You ask about the Alaskans. Alaska does have a very distinctive perspective. I just happen to know a lot of people from Alaska. I've had good friends and I have family members who were from Alaska. And Alaskans strike me as similar to Texans in several respects. Texans are very known to preserve an old-fashioned state pride, if not to say state chauvinism here in the United States. Texans want you to know that they are from Texas, and they strongly believe this means important things about their character, their outlook, their role in America. And I love that about Texans. I sincerely do. I am not a Texan. I don't have. I'm not fond of big Texas cities. I think they're alienating. Once again, call me a stick in the mud. That's just how I am. That's just the sort of person I am. I don't want to go and live in Houston or something. That would be I don't know. That doesn't seem to me to be a happy way to live. Uh, I want space. I want old things. I don't want brand new everything. I don't want parking lots everywhere. Um, but anyway, Texans, they really love Texas. It's a wonderful thing about Texas. Texas is huge. Oh, it's got it, I don't think it's the size of France, but it would be comparable to major European countries. It's probably the size of Spain. I'm just guessing it would be larger than Spain. It's Texas is probably significantly larger than Italy. Um, Texas is not as big as Germany. Texas is probably the same size as the island of Britain, or larger. It is a big, big place with a tremendous large population for an American state as well. But they have a special identity. They have a special history. They were an independent country for a decade before they were accepted into the Union. They won their own independence. Not to say they didn't have a lot of support from Anglo-Americans who went there in large numbers to fight for the independence of Texas. But Alaska also has this sort of perspective. They are so far away from the rest of the country They need to fend for themselves much more than Americans do, continental Americans. They don't have the infrastructure that the rest of the United States does. They don't have highways connecting all their cities together. They have lots of settlements that are way out in the wilderness. The only way to get there is by boat or by plane or overland by snowmobile or off-road vehicle, basically. Really wild place. So they have a strong spirit of self-sufficiency. They need to take care of themselves. Fascinating people. Now, my idea is that different regions of the United States have these various perspectives. Different people groups in the United States have these various perspectives, different outlooks, different histories, different stories, and should cultivate them. Now, that's not going to be that's not going to be based on the organization of the states as they are now necessarily. All right, there are many distinctive regions inside of existing states. Louisiana, for example, there are a number of distinctive parts of Louisiana. New Orleans is very different from the rest of Louisiana. North Louisiana is extremely Protestant. It does not have the big settlement of Spanish Creoles, French settlers that you find in South Louisiana. So ethnically, it is distinctive and different. Ethnically, North Louisiana is far more like Mississippi and Arkansas, culturally, demographically, linguistically. All right, they tend to have a different accent in North Louisiana than they do in South Louisiana. They also are different politically, and there is tension inside of Louisiana about that. All right, so Louisiana, broadly speaking, has three very distinctive regions to it. North Louisiana, South Louisiana, Catholic Louisiana, if you will, French Catholic, and the big city of New Orleans, which is its own thing. All right, so even in a state like Louisiana, we see that it's not a state organized sort of thing that I'm proposing. The states were originally organized based on a set of people that could coalesce politically. I'm not sure they can coalesce the same way politically today. So, for what it's worth, I'm wondering, are you Eastern European, Mr. Baranowski? You have a delightful name. I don't know much about those areas of Europe. I have great sympathy for you. I love talking about my country, and it's nice to connect this way. Best wishes to you, and thank you for participating.